Hey, Decathlon Gamer, welcome back to Vicky 3. This is episode 38. While it's only been 10 years, a lot has happened, an absolute ton, and things are so different than what they were. And ultimately, what has happened, us, the Paint the Map Blue Nation, has had a civil war. And we were on the other side and won. Huge cost, and things are oh so different now than they were prior. The millions and millions that we had in the bank have seemingly gone into families' pockets because they do not exist anymore. Our form of government started with no money as we started a revolution without the coffers. As we were in the middle of a huge war with a ton of units, we had a huge deficit, and that deficit was nowhere near being covered. So before the war even ended, we declared bankruptcy. Now that the war has ended in our favor, we have a massive bureaucratic shortfall. Access to the money we need, we don't have the bureaucracy. We turned up to the higher level to get that, but we don't have the telephones. And we're still deficit spending, making things worse. So right now, we have two major things that we need to overcome. One, this bureaucratic shortfall, and two, this massively negative balance. Now, our credit rating has at least improved to the point where we can deficit spend to 19 million. We have an investment pool of near 10 million, but we're already using 11 million of that credit. So we only have 8 million to spare, and we have a deficit of 100,000. It's going to take a while, but we are approaching that, and of course our interest is getting higher and higher. It's at 18,000. We also have some things turned in a very bad direction just to make it somewhat neutral. Our taxation level is absurdly high, and we've got our government turned down, and our military is neutral. We could turn them down and save 9,000, but we're not that close to that mattering. That's a pretty small chunk of what we have going on overall. What we need is we need to improve the bureaucracy so that we can start collecting the funds, so that we can pay off the credit and get out of debt. So what we're doing is the major shortage that we have right now in the bureaucracy side, government administration, is we turned up and need telephone service. We had been working on it before when the war started. It didn't finish. We paused long enough that it went away, and that construction was deemed irrelevant. So we are constructing telephones, but they take a long time. We have 16 weeks to go just till the very first one is done. In the meantime, to help with the shortfall, it's going to take half a year, but we are turning down colonial affairs a level. We are turning down education a level to help with that shortfall, the need, the demand that we have on bureaucracy cost. It looks like that's going to bring us down by about 600 on the need. The telephones will help us with the production side of things. Short term, we have a massive problem that we need to address. Now, long term, the great news out of this is now that we are a new United States, recently reunited, back in a very similar state to what we were before, we have zero infamy. So we can go paint the map blue again after we've got our internal issues sorted out. The other long-term thing that we're going to need to do is that we lost half of our prestige by flipping to a new United States. So we're back down to number 4 in the rankings. GDP is 50 million down from what it was. Standard of living is down by 1.5. The population is higher than before. Meantime, this is how things are looking in Africa, as we have definitely grown and changed a lot. We don't want to do any new colonization until we sort out the economic situation. But getting telephones on the market is going to make a big difference. Speaking of telephones on the market, what do we have? Has anybody got telephones that we can bring in? Nobody has telephones. Is there anything else on the market that's not so drastically important that's a problem? We've cut the deficit down to 40,000, which is helping because that credit, there we go, we're hitting a positive balance. It's jumped by 1,000, and that's because telephones are starting to enter the market. So without the shortages, it's boosting things up, and it is finally starting to go the way we need it to go. Again, still a deficit, but positive balance. I think we are going to be okay. Yeah, credit at 13 million, you don't want to be hanging on, but the bureaucracy part is okay, and war has been having a leg up, but we have forces there. We're okay. We've just about covered off the bureaucracy now, so what a relief. What a relief. Now, this is also going to give us a lot of excess. I think at some point here we're going to want to turn things back up. Colonial affairs could go all the way up. Wow. Social Security. I'm not sure I like this one because that's already costing us a lot, but the education, we definitely want to turn that back up. We're up to 1.4 now. Health system, turn that up. Decreasing mortality by 20%. Finishing some journal entries here. Progress towards radio. Or electrics industry. Let's. For once, I'm going to actually take the bonus in the industry. Okay, 174,000 budget. Let's start fixing things. Let's turn the government back up. 132,000. 74,000 decrease, but let's take it. We need to start fixing the economy, and you can see we are very much into the last pockets. Africa that we don't have, but we do have this area. Let's go ahead and go back into established colony. We're good. Not much colonialism left. Most colonies, most areas that can be colonized have been. Biggest pocket left is there. And we're already colonizing here. As much as I'm eager to get on the offensive again and start claiming territory for the U.S., that huge deficit that we have and the fact that the economy is still turned up higher than we want it to be means I'm not ready. I want to still restore a strong economy before and a nice positive balance looks nice, but it does not mean that we have a nice strong balance right now. All right, we can afford to turn the economy back to neutral. We're almost back to where we were. Remember, we were actually a stage below. So recovery's going well now. Definitely going well. We still have credit. We still have a deficit. But new election, free trade party, total control, 100%. That's making things a little bit easier. That's the industrialists all. Women in the workplace. Women's suffrage. And the industrialists approve of women's suffrage. I think we're going to be going to women's suffrage now. Workforce ratio plus 15%, birth rates down 5%, but with mortality rates dropping, that is easily covered. Women's suffrage. And our economy that had a much better GDP than what we have now, it's getting closer to it again. We're back up to 168 million already. It is recovering. I did notice as I'm going through, a lot of industries changed whatever they had been doing. And so kind of getting them turned back up again is a big part to why certain parts of the economy were going differently than expected. We had an election just after I clicked things, and it actually ended the debate. So what we had going for women's suffrage just disappeared. So I'm going to try again on that one. We have a 64% chance of passing it on the first go. Authority is a little bit low. Let's go ahead and take one of these and figure out which one is gaining the next. Consumption tax, tobacco. There we go. Back to a positive balance. That credit, the deficit that we have has dropped to below 6 million now. And at plus 83,000, it's recovering pretty quick. That interest level's down to 6,000 on a basis. So, it's getting better. It is getting so much better. And I think we're much closer to getting back into that concept of gaining territory. Obvious candidates early on. Mexico to try to connect up. British Columbia to finish, gathering this territory. Getting Alaska, the last state that we are missing. Or continuing on with our venture in South America. We could also get more aggressive in somewhere like, say, Africa. But I don't want to quite venture into that area. I'd rather get South America first. I'd rather get Central America first. I'd rather get the Caribbean first. Wow, it didn't pass? Wait. Didn't pass. Okay. Should pass quite easily, though. We can finally turn back down to the levels we were at before. Economy is fully restored, and we still have a positive balance. The only thing that's not fully restored is the credit, which is already down below 5 million. Balance not massively positive right now, though, and we really can't afford for it to drop. So I'm not going to initiate a war right now, but I think we will do so. Back up to number 3, transfer chasing and Great Qing, so technically number 4. And women's suffrage has passed. A lot of groups do not like it, though. So I think it's time to get Britain out of the Americas entirely. So that's British Columbia, it's Newfoundland, that is Guatemala, and then is British Guyana. And then Caribbean as well, maybe the Bahamas. Might also, depending on if we can, include, what is that? They call it South Atlantic Islands, but that's not the right name for it. It was something else. Gosh, they had a war there in like 74. 73-ish, 75-ish. Anyway, we're going to do it. We're going to start with the primary of British Columbia as our target. They've never gotten strong. I mean, they are still very, very weak, and they shouldn't have much support. They do have some remaining powers under their control, but nothing severe. Russia is the only one who may intervene and be problematic. How does Russia feel about us anyway? Are they even on this list? They're genial. All right, so I've opted to add in certain war goals. One that wasn't optional to us, I'm guessing we don't have interest in the region currently, is the British Guyana. So that would leave them one pocket to get after later. But then we've gone after some eligible African targets. I'm assuming that's pretty much all of this through here. So now I'm waiting on the activation of our military because that balance is only slightly positive. Okay, and Britain has backed down without conflict. So British Columbia is ours without a war, and that's going to now settle us in on 30.4. It's a pretty big area we gathered, but it's not a terribly costly one in terms of starting from zero. Scandinavia has all come together as one big nation here, I see. They are the number 9 major power now. They're still actually quite weak. They have a target that I would certainly be happy to take from them. How strong is Brazil these days? Not that strong. Russia is now the only other major player left in the Americas, and that is just Alaska. At the moment, I'm not quite ready to take them on, but I think we could definitely beat Russia in a head-to-head if it came down to it. Updating our interest maps, we had some areas that didn't show interest, so Mexico, the rest of South America, Caribbean, Greenland, Iceland, bringing those in so we can kind of unite this whole part of the map near target. So we are back up to number 2, by the way, well ahead of France now. Revolutionary Austria, so they are having their own conflict. And now is probably a good time to be making a move. Great Qing is still ahead of us, but we are catching back up. Spain, Italy, and France all have an interest in Mexico for whatever reason. Spain I kind of get. Italy and France I'm a bit surprised by. But again, the target is Mexico, so it wouldn't be that hard to gain something on them. Infamy level gain for the Rio Grande state isn't bad. Now going after a lot, well, that's a different story. El Salvador has abandoned Mexico. Nobody is leaning their way right now. A connection to our southern states. So Veracruz. Italy sides with Mexico. So there you go. It's not going to be a given, which means it very much could turn into a war. And therefore, if we're going to go for it, we might as well. Alright, our aggression has led to everyone not liking us once again, but this would be a huge territorial grab with more than half of Mexico becoming ours. I am going to have to initiate our military here at some point, and I think we do need to turn this back up. Short term, you know, we still have credit. We don't want to have too many issues long term. We want to continue to get the economy going the right way, even if that means occasionally turning that back up. Never saw any announcement of it, but Spain has decided to join the war as well on their side. So we do have Italy and Spain coming, and it looks like we are going to war. Mexico, for whatever reason, continually not wanting to back down. And war has broken out with Mexico, so it is happening, folks. It is happening. Minus 229 to start, but we have a lot of war goals. War reparations is all that they are targeting, and that's going to take a long time with a minus 590. 36-5 advantage in the south. In the north, though, that is where they have some support, and it's already present. So they have 60 units. Well, we have 60 units present. They have 56. 17 of those from Spain, 39 from Mexico. But we have an advantage on both fronts and a very strong advantage on the south. That should see us conquer a lot of territory quickly. But with some lofty goals, it could take a while to accomplish. But you can see we are already pushing into their lands now, this Yucatan area. 6-6 for now. Now 26-6. Can we close off the Yucatan before they get support? Oh, they're not getting support. Okay. Okay, now there's a lot happening here, and we're going to need a lot of additional forces there almost right away, but we'll have the Yucatan taken quite soon. And meanwhile, you know, we're holding a lot of Mexico, but what we don't want is we don't want to be losing ground into the U.S. Okay, Yucatan is ours. And those units are going to move over here, which is going to add to that advantage. There's 82 units there. That's not much of an advantage. We need more here. We've got to counter that to stop them from pushing into the U.S. because then the war score can tick our way. And that minus 510, it's going to take a long time to get that in our favor. We might not get all of our war goals, potentially. I want to switch to defending this front, the Sonora front. Alright, so we've switched all three armies to defending the front. We have 3 days until another one is present. And now it's a -2, so it's almost a stalemate. Almost. Meanwhile, we still have a slight advantage on this front. And continue to gain. It's already down to a 468. Yeah, we just gained more territory down there. And this one's now in neutral. It's a 0. I'd prefer not to have a deficit, so we're going to recruit one more general. Access to 18 units. Mobilize. And have him come defend this front as well. That should give us a slight advantage now from a neutral 0. Meanwhile, Mexico's down to a -12. And we continue to make small gains on the southern front while holding steady on the northern front. And it's down to a 406. There we go. With those new units in place, we do have a slight advantage. We remain at a +91 on war support. They're at a -48. Mexico proposing white peace. No, thank you. We are holding pretty steady on that northern front. And again, still making those small gains on this southern front. -80, -87. So even though we're at -323, I think if they hit a -100, they will capitulate and we'll get our goals. And there it is, capitulation. And we have done it. We have done it. Now, this is going to piss off a lot of people, though. But there you go. That's all that's left of Mexico. And we have now connected Central America to, you know, the upper portion of North America. Central America is technically North America as well. But look at that expansion now. This is going to actually improve the market accessibility of this whole region significantly, as they weren't full states. They had limited access. They're going to have better access now, and this is going to make our economy stronger. Well, just like that, we are a pariah once again. We actually had a negative event that added some infamy to us, about 14 of it. Otherwise, we'd be at a 120. That was a huge chunk. I mean, that was more than half of Mexico that we just picked up. There's not a whole lot left. One more war is probably enough to do it when it comes to beating Mexico eventually. One war with Britain is going to be enough to get them out of the Americas, and we can definitely turn our focus to now South America, other than that one more war with each of those two. and then the Caribbean here at some phase as well. Won't be hard. There's really not much to get through the Caribbean. All right, we want to turn this back down, but only once we know it's a positive balance. So let's wait a little bit to see this tick back up. Down to 2.5 million on that credit. Pre-Civil War numbers are starting to recover. GDP is back about to where it was. The Free Trade Party has just beat the Working Men's Party by 0.1%, with the Democrats 2% behind and the Socialists 8% behind. So a very split government this time. We'll see what we can do about framing that. But that economy is not quite back restored to where we want it to be just yet. I don't think we're going to be passing too many laws with the current state of things. In fact, the highest we can get is 50%. And that's adding the rural and the trade folks into the government. That's a rough profile. Folks, we have done it. We have overtaken not only Great Qing, still communist Austria in revolt. Okay, take it with a grain of salt. It's not a permanent fixture that we find ourselves in, as they are having their own issues that similar to what we had 9 years ago now. But we have restored a prestige to over 2,000, and currently, anyway, are number one. Our government is currently number 2 behind Great Qing. Standard of living, that big drop off that's in recovery, right? We were almost 15. We were at 14.9. I think we dropped down to a high 12 during the war, and in the aftermath of the war. It's back up to a 14.2 now. It's definitely not where it was previously, and the population is growing pretty rapidly now, much more so than before, with 60 million, which has climbed to number 4. We've so very nearly covered off the credit, and we have so very nearly covered enough of a balance to turn taxation back down a level. But neither one's there just yet. So a little bit longer. We also don't have all the construction we could be doing active. We have gold reserves. We've finally gotten the government out of debt, and we also finally have a balance high enough to turn the taxation back down. So we are finally in the happy zone once again, where we want to be, with a positive balance, and for the first time since pre-Civil War, without any debt. And for that, we start to feed the gold reserves, which has room for 42 million, is already at 1.8, so it's climbing pretty quick. We've already added 200 prestige, but in the handful of months or year or so since we last left off, Austria has been reunited, restored for them. So they're back to number 1. Their prestige is on top. We are number 2 once again, but GDP still ahead of them. Standard of living still ahead of them and climbing. We're back up to number 22 now, and population continues to grow. In fact, it's gone from number 4 to number 3 as we've passed Russia. There are more Americans than there are Russians in the world. Take that one, think about it for a second, and then you can go, okay, I see how it is that the U.S. is becoming so powerful. Now, of course, one threat up here, and look, it's not such a threat anymore. We're not that far. We are not that far now from taking on Russia and taking Alaska away from them and pushing them out of North America. We are still a pariah. We're still at a 126. That's going to take a while to subside, to go away. But again, you get a strong enough military, it doesn't matter as much. We're over 2,000 on power projection. We're at 1,500 on the Navy. But again, Mr. Number 1, Austria, 3,200, 2,500. They are absolutely a major threat, and we've got a long ways to go to still overtake them. But overtaking everybody else has seemingly happened now. Great Qing, of course, who very much like to keep to themselves. Only 2,600, considering 400 battalions, and no speakable Navy, so they're very weak on the Navy front. Another potential early target for us, Japan, before they get strong. But I very much want to get, South America start absorbing South America. Once you have full control of the Americas, then the world's your oyster. Then we've already got a foothold in Africa, so you can really kind of focus on expanding there. Getting some Scandinavia regions to maybe get an edge into Europe. I'm thinking way ahead, and we've got 38 years left. I don't know how much we can do in that time, especially until we can eclipse Austria as the most powerful. This economy has taken so long. So it feels like. I mean, it's only been like 15 years or something like that since the onset of the Civil War, if that. But it feels like it's taken a really long time. Okay, so Australia, New South Wales. Oh my goodness, they are so weak. I had no idea they were so weak. Well, there's an easy target for you, right? You clean up Oceania and then push into Southeast Asia, push into Japan, and you beat back Russia out of the Americas, and that's your ticket. So we sweep this way into Asia, and this way to eliminate any islander threat. Then you expand out of here. So again, beating back Russia, beating back France, and definitely getting into the Wadais, the Darfurs, right? There's a thought for you. We as the United States, what should be future targets for us? Just think of this one real quick. Take Darfur. Take Ashanti. You start pushing up into Saudi Arabia and maybe take Persia, right? Because you then open a path into more heartland. You can get to Russia through Persia. You don't have to go through Great Qing for a while as you're making your way into Southeast Asia, right? So that's going to take a while. And then you're taking Japan. So wouldn't that be something if we go through all those playthroughs and then come back and conquer every last one of them? But today we have made a massive gain in one of our goals, because I would love to get from point to point, tip to tip, within America. I don't want to get all of the Americas. I mean, if we accomplish that before the end of the playthrough, it's going to be a very, very successful playthrough. I'm not sure we're going to conquer the entire world, but you weaken Austria enough, we can get to a point where we can really just take World War One, because there hasn't been a World War One, us versus everybody, and just beat them all back. We're not there yet, though. We are totally not there yet. There's a lot of fronts that we would have to fight, and the ones that would really hurt us are like here, right? Too many directions to defend. Too many fronts. We don't have enough generals. We don't have enough units for something like that. So holding this would be almost impossible. And losing this is the same as losing your homeland in terms of the way war scores work. So in real life, America, none of these are states, right? America wouldn't care about losing their colonial Africa. I mean, they'd care a tiny bit, but they wouldn't care about that. It's very different than if they invaded, Kansas, got into the heartland of America. They're going to care a lot more about that. They're going to be demoralized way more by that than they are here. Same with the states down here, for that matter. I mean, they're going to care a little more about this than that, but not much. They're not going to care about losing Western Australia. You get the point. The way war scores work, you're going to get that negative ticking war score if they take even one plot of territory, beating other nations one by one and conquering them for one war goal. You're only going to have so much. If you're playing everybody at the same time, too many fronts. You can conquer them one by one and make them individually capitulate and take that territory. Maybe that's not a terrible thing, because what are you going to face? Well, you're going to face that coalition, right? And that coalition's going to take everything from the last 10 years and give it all back. So, yeah, you can see how that coalition could succeed, could stop you. But I wouldn't mind trying before the end of the playthrough, if we're strong enough. For now, we're not even strong enough to beat Austria. But we are number 2, and that feels good. And deservedly number 2. That Civil War was nasty, though, and that was a definite setback. Definite setback. I mean, it's cost us at least 10 years of progress, maybe 15 years of progress. The only thing it helped with was taking that infamy and making it go away temporarily for a while. But even then, we had to stall probably to the same stage, the same point that we would have without the Civil War, or maybe even longer then, because of the economy part. And the economy is nowhere near as strong as it was, though technically it is. We're at 216 million, but we don't have the balance in the way that we had it before. We're making a lot, we're producing a lot, we're doing a lot. It's not the same level of strength. You know, we were plus 80,000 with 40, 50, 60 million in the bank. We're at 25 right now. It's not terrible, and we're same settings as what we had back then, so it's not terrible, but it's still not balance-wise what it had been. Population's booming, 62 million and climbing. Standard of living's climbing up again. The literacy is kind of settled in at 72%, and we're strong. We are very strong as we grow. We're ticking off a lot of people and facing some opposition. And depending on who wants to stand up against you, there's threats. How they want to stand against you, there's threats, right? If we suddenly had a coalition war against France, well, now we share a border. So they would send a lot of units there. And that would be a tough fight. That's going to do it for this episode. I'm Decathlon Gamer. Like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Have a good one. Be safe out there. Bye for now.